Our dream was to drive across America.
Going all the way from California to Maine on board our 35-foot ARTLAND RV.
And we had a mission.
To see the most fabulous art and architecture in the whole country.
This is Mae McCutcheon. She wanted to meet artists and curators to explore the cultural heart of the United States.
And this is Charlie Luxton. He's an English designer and he's passionate about our buildings.
Wow. Together we're bringing you the very best of what we saw on the road. This is America.
This is ARTLAND, USA.
Another day, another RV park, but this is the last RV park that we'll be staying in on our 10,000-mile trip across the United States, looking at the best of its art and architecture.
And on that journey, we saw a lot of collections and a lot of collectors, and that's what this show is about.
Nobody collects like the Americans. So on our road trip across the States, what was the very best collection that we saw? We're going to show you a dozen of them, and perhaps you can help us decide. Certainly on the day we visited the small town of Beacon, I thought that no one does collecting better than deer. An hour and a half north of New York, on the banks of the Hudson River, sits Deer Beacon. 300,000 square foot of contemporary art gallery dedicated to showing large-scale sculpture and installation. If you like your art big, this is Mecca. It's a mind-blowing space, filled with many of America's household names. Richard Serra, Dan Flavin, and Gerhard Richter, to name but three. People often describe art galleries as being the cathedrals of the modern age. Sometimes that seems a little far-fetched. But here at Deer Beacon and here in front of these magnificent works, it seems very, very true to me. It's a spiritual, deeply thoughtful place. And if contemplative art is your thing, you'll make a beeline to Michael Heitz's sculpture, north, east, south, west. Stretching 125 feet long and sinking 20 feet into the gallery floor, these sculptural elements form a series of near-tangible nothingness, or negative space, as Heitzer calls it. Sculpture defined by absence rather than presence. But what does Heitzer want me to understand from these voids? Jennifer Makovitz is going to help me fill in the blanks. Heitzer's trying to bring through with this piece.
Well, Michael actually made this piece in 1967 in a different scale, different materials, and set the two furthest elements, north and south, and the ground of the Sierra Nevada. And he'd been working with this idea of negative sculptures for quite some time after that. When he first made it, it was much smaller scale, but it was Michael on a shovel.
Is that how he originally started? Literally himself out there digging it out?
Yeah. Well, yeah, he did a whole series of these works then in the desert, and all these negative sculptures. But what was very important was scale. During the 60s, when he was working, the late 60s and the 70s, technology was crazy. The atomic bomb was being built, the 747 was being built, and it was all about America and being big. Big. So his work is a lot about scale.
Is there something important and American about the lining of these holes, these kind of raw rolled steel?
Well, what's actually very interesting is this was one of the last runs of steel off the Bethlehem steel mill.
Which is local to here?
Which is in Pennsylvania, yeah. And kind of mythologized because it was such a big thing. It really brought money to the East during that period.
This is quite a hard question to ask, but what do you think Michael Hines is trying to make me feel or think when I look at this piece? It's a toughie, isn't it?
Because a lot of it is about scale and about these simple shapes, it's more about, it's about awe, feeling awe. It's awe-inspiring.
It works. I'm awed. I find these negative spaces mesmeric, but I'm just as interested in the genesis of the gallery. What about the sanctification of this 21st century art cathedral? Why was Beacon chosen, and specifically why this building?
Well, Dia had been looking for a site for its permanent collection for quite a while. And one particular day, our foundation's director, Michael Govan, was flying up the Hudson River in a small plane, and this building was spotted. And there's 40,000 square feet of skylights here, so you could see the skylights from the air. And it was just noted this was a spectacular site. At the time, he didn't even know what city this was. And then 6 months later, when we'd run out of all of our other options for buildings in and around Manhattan, this building sprang to mind, and he remembered that was the eureka moment.
How is the collection organized?
Well, the collection is comprised of some of the greatest works of art made since 1960. And the way that it's organized is continuing with our philosophy of working directly with the artists. It's a place for artists to work on an unprecedented scale and to make projects that, because of their temporal scale or their physical scale, just couldn't be achieved and supported by other institutions.
In my experience, only Tate Modern's Turbine Hall in London can compete with the scale of Dear Beacon. This is a gargantuan gallery, but the artworks succeed in being every bit as momentous as their setting.
As we hit the highways from San Diego, California, right across to Portland, Maine, we weren't just interested in galleries. We wanted to track down collections of all kinds, and in the unlikeliest of places, like Las Vegas, Nevada. And what do you think of when you think of Las Vegas? Sure, there are slots and there's sleaze, but also on the list has to be the neon. But where do the signs go when the lights are switched off for the last time? Call it kitsch, call it junk, but I call it the closest we've seen to a sculpture garden. So we're in the Neon Museum Boneyard. What does that mean?
The boneyard houses our unrestored portion of our collection. We call it a boneyard because we don't consider the signs dead. A lot of people call it the graveyard, which it's not. It's the boneyard. It's sort of the relics of the signage of Las Vegas. Two of the most iconic signs here in the boneyard are probably this Aladdin's lamp behind us and the silver slipper, which we'll keep going to over here. Basically, what we try to do is we try to keep our eye on what's still up in the community. And if we hear a demolition permit's been pulled on a property, or if construction fencing appears all of a sudden, we try to reach out to the owners and ask them if they'd like to donate the sign to us.
Now here is the silver slipper.
Yeah, the silver slipper is the locals' favorite as far as signage goes. There's also a really cool story about the silver slipper. Evidently, when Howard Hughes was living across the street from the Desert Inn penthouse, the light from the slipper, when it was turned on at night, was so bright, it was really bothering him, and he purchased the property in order to shut it off.
It's not just the silver slipper that has escaped the whims of eccentric millionaires. In total, there are over 100 of these decaying signs.
What is it about these signs in the middle of a lot? They're no longer plugged in, they're not lit up. Why do people want to see them?
I think the interest in the boneyard specifically is because it is so sort of desolate and abandoned, and it kind of has that abandoned American West feel. You know, I think there is a lot of interest in sort of like these postmodern relics that the signs, you know, represent. There's wonderful typefaces here that nobody uses anymore, as well as just primary colors. Not a lot of people do signage in that kind of color scheme anymore either. And people have an appreciation for it.
People come here and they're looking at the signs. What happens to them?
Their reactions run the gamut. It's amazing. I've had one person, when she laid her eyes on the silver slipper, she literally screamed and broke into tears because she was like, that's my slipper, that's what I remember.
So this museum is really taking on the role of archiving Nevada history.
The signs are Vegas's history. You know, I think there's a number of people that come here and they're a little bit disappointed that the glamour days of Vegas are really tough to find, you know, and that vintage Vegas experience that I think some people expect to still exist really is lacking. And I always say this is the last place to experience that. The downtown hotels, of course, do exude that still a bit, but this is the last resting place for vintage Vegas experience.
There's something still and beautiful about the neon boneyard. I think about the existing strip and wonder how many of those signs, too, will find their resting place here.
Now, neons are nice, but if you want to find the very best collection we encountered in Artland, we surely have to look elsewhere. Like the graceful new extension designed by Swiss architects Herzog and de Meuron, to Minneapolis's wonderful Walker Art Center. The galleries here hold a stunning collection of modern art, including Charles Ray's fiberglass cast of a crashed car. Showing me around one remarkable sculpture is the gallery's senior curator, Philip Verne.
What you see here, this car, this untitled, unpainted sculpture is not a ready-made. It's actually the story behind this sculpture is that Charlie Ray identified in a junkyard a car and then brought it to the studio, disassembled it piece by piece and recast it in fiberglass.
So this isn't the car sprayed
It's not no. That's fiberglass. So it's actually one of the most, if you think about it, it's one of the most traditional way of doing sculpture. So it's reinventing sculpture. This piece is a monument of 20th century. 20th century being the moment when the culture of automotive transportation, the culture of car that we're still suffering from. You know, there is no, you know, why are we
an urban level,
an
or a
urban
social level?
Why are we so attracted to oil so that we can run our cars? And that's, you know, this great progress, which is also our great failure, is what is embodied in this car. What's also fascinating for me with this car, in terms of like an object that tells history, you know, in a noble sense of history, is that in the back you have this little sticker, which is Jesus is Lord, and with, you know, again, something that the artist identified. What does it mean? This destroyed car, which has a stamp, this sticker, Jesus is Lord. What does it say about our culture right now?
But it's a wonderfully crafted object, isn't it? Beyond its intellectual position, it is beautifully made.
It's also what makes a great artist, is that everything comes together. It's actually content-wise, aesthetically-wise, it's totally balanced. I mean, you can talk purely about sculpture, or you can talk purely about politics, but I do believe that culture, aesthetic, ethic are not that separated. And that's what makes a great, fascinating work of art, because, you know, you can forget everything I've said about Jesus is Lord, about oil, about the 20th century, and just look at it as one of the most incredible
Crafted
ghost objects.
Artwork work isn't restricted to the interior of the walker. Just across the road is the 11-acre sculpture garden, home to over 40 works of contemporary art.
You've got a kid climbing on sculpture over here. Now that doesn't happen indoors, does it?
Not that I know of. I hope not. But there is few pieces indoor that people can touch, but we control that here. They can look at them. They're
all over it.
Soon they're gonna be members of the walker. That's where it starts. You start to jump on the sculpture, and then you got addicted.
More than 5 million people have visited the garden since its inauguration in 1988. Many come to see Minneapolis's favorite sculpture.
So the Klaus Oldenburg has looked better. What's going on?
We're doing the dishes.
Doing the dishes?
We haven't done the dishes in 5 years, and we thought it was time. No, every 5 years because it's outside. I mean, and the weather is kind of harsh here. So every 5 years, it's important that we make it look as good as possible. I mean, it's that's the signature piece of the sculpture garden, and I guess people love it. It's everywhere. I mean, like, you cannot think about the walker with not the spoon bridge and cherry, with not the Oldenburg.
Now, what about the fact that when people go in the museum, they have to go through an admission process, and out here they could just walk in. There's no gate, there's no fee,
The first test is free. I mean, that's also what we're a public institution, and I think there is a level of what we do, and we want to keep the level of accessibility as open as possible. It would be great to have the same policy inside. Unfortunately, there is a harsh reality. So it's very important for us to be able to provide this absolutely open experience.
The walker is wonderful, whether outside in the garden or inside the galleries. I'll definitely be back.
In this mammoth journey that we've taken across the country, I've been looking at a lot of art.
And I've been looking at bucket loads of amazing architecture. I've seen 2 of the seminal houses from the 20th century, witnessed the birth and development of the skyscraper in Chicago, and even seen a house made of dirt.
He's been living the dream.
I have. I've been living the dream. In this show, Mame and I are looking back over that dream, recalling the very best of the architecture that we visited. When I was studying architecture, there were a handful of buildings that I knew one day I had to visit. And right at the top of my wish list was the Salk Institute, a short hop in the ARTLAND bus up the coast from San Diego.
Pharrell Williams here.
Hi, I'm Joy Bryant,
I'm Eric Ripper.
I'm Tom Colicchio.
I'm Dr. Frank Lipman, the host of On the Table,
the host of Across the Board,
Host of Artist Talk.
Host of Hooked Up.
Host of the show, Be Well Week, Be Well Weekend, on the Reserve channel.
It's only on Reserve.
Did you know that you can follow my show on social media sites like Facebook?
Follow us on Twitter.
If you're a fan of my show, hit the like button.
All of the above.
Share me with your friends.
Treat yourself. Check out a new episode of my show, Hooked Up.
And if you want to leave comments, feedbacks, ideas, whatever, love to hear from you. Leave a comment.
And if you don't want to miss the show, be sure to subscribe.
The one that's like down here, or is it here? Somewhere down here.
Thanks for watching the Reserve channel.
Only on YouTube. Throw caution to the wind and ask yourself what rules.